License and registration. Now. The sharp command cut through the night air as Officer Daniel Mitchell flashed his beam directly into the young black man's face. Step out of the vehicle with your hands visible. Marcus Thompson sat calmly behind the wheel of his BMW, his expensive suit barely visible in the darkness as he reached slowly for his wallet. "Officer, I haven't broken any traffic laws," he said respectfully, though his voice carried a quiet confidence that irritated Mitchell immediately. "I'll decide what laws you've broken," Mitchell snapped, his hand resting on his weapon as he studied Marcus with obvious suspicion. But what Officer Mitchell didn't know was that he had just pulled over a federal agent who outranked every cop in the city, and in exactly 15 minutes his badge was about to become worthless. The intersection of Maple Street and Fifth Avenue had always been Officer Daniel Mitchell's favorite hunting ground. At 34, he'd spent 8 years working the night shift in downtown Richmond, and he'd developed an eye for what he called suspicious activity. Tonight, like most nights, he positioned his patrol car in the shadows between two office buildings, watching the flow of late-evening traffic with the patience of a predator waiting for prey. Mitchell took pride in his arrest record. He'd brought in more suspects than any other officer in his precinct, a statistic that had earned him commendations from his supervisors and the respect of his fellow officers. But those who knew him best understood that Mitchell's success came from a particular approach to law enforcement. He had theories about crime, about patterns, about the kind of people who were most likely to be carrying drugs, weapons, or outstanding warrants. And those theories, though he'd never admitted publicly, were heavily influenced by the color of a person's skin. At 11:47 p.m., Mitchell spotted his target. A black BMW sedan with tinted windows was approaching the intersection, moving at exactly the speed limit. The driver appeared to be a young black man, though the darkness made it difficult to see clearly. To most observers, there was nothing unusual about the scene. The car was expensive but not flashy. The driver was obeying all traffic laws, and the vehicle's registration was clearly visible. But Mitchell saw something different. He saw a young black man driving an expensive car late at night, and in his experience, that combination usually meant drugs, stolen property, or worse. He'd made hundreds of arrests based on similar observations, and he'd learned to trust his instincts. Marcus Thompson had been driving home from a late dinner with colleagues when he noticed the police car in his rearview mirror. At 29, he'd learned to recognize the signs of being followed by law enforcement: the gradual closing of distance, the positioning just far enough back to avoid seeming obvious, the way the patrol car matched his speed and movements. As a federal agent working for the DEA, Marcus understood police procedures and tactics better than most civilians. He also understood, with the bitter clarity that came from personal experience, that his profession wouldn't protect him from being profiled during a traffic stop. He'd been pulled over 17 times in the past 5 years, and only 3 of those stops had resulted in actual citations for traffic violations. The rest had been what he'd come to think of as fishing expeditions, stops based on suspicion, assumption, and the belief that a young black man in a nice car must be doing something illegal. Marcus slowed his BMW as he approached the red light at Maple and Fifth, coming to a complete stop and waiting patiently for the signal to change. Behind him, Mitchell activated his emergency lights, the red and blue flashes immediately transforming the quiet intersection into a stage for what was about to unfold. Marcus pulled into the parking lot of a closed office building, positioning his car under a streetlight where both he and the officer would be clearly visible. He rolled down his windows, placed his hands on the steering wheel, and waited. These were tactics he'd learned not from police training, but from years of being pulled over while black. Mitchell approached the driver's side with his flashlight raised, the beam aimed directly at Marcus's face. Even in the artificial light, Marcus could see that the officer was young, confident, and carrying himself with the swagger of someone who expected immediate compliance. "License and registration, now," Mitchell commanded, his voice carrying the sharp edge of authority he'd perfected over years of traffic stops. Marcus reached slowly toward his glove compartment, his movements deliberate and visible. "Officer, may I ask why I was stopped? I believe I was following all traffic laws." The question irritated Mitchell immediately. In his experience, Guilty people asked questions while innocent people complied. "I'll ask the questions here," he said. "Step out of the vehicle with your hands visible." Marcus remained calm, though he could feel the familiar surge of frustration that came with these encounters. "Am I under arrest, officer?" "You will be if you don't follow my instructions," Mitchell snapped, his hand moving to rest on his weapon. "Out of the car now." Marcus complied, stepping out of his BMW with his hands slightly raised, his expensive suit and professional demeanor clearly visible under the streetlight. He was tall, well-built, and carried himself with the confidence of someone accustomed to being in control of difficult situations. But Mitchell saw something different. He saw a young black man in expensive clothes driving a luxury car, and his instincts told him that something wasn't right. "Turn around and put your hands on the vehicle," he commanded. "Officer, I need to inform you that I'm a federal agent," Marcus said calmly, though he made no sudden movements toward his identification. Mitchell laughed harshly. "Sure you are. And I'm the FBI director. Hands on the car now." Marcus placed his hands on the hood of his BMW, allowing Mitchell to pat him down for weapons. The search was thorough and slightly more aggressive than necessary, designed to establish dominance and humiliate the suspect. "So what's your story?" Mitchell asked as he searched Marcus's pockets. "Late night, expensive car, nervous behavior. You dealing drugs, carrying weapons, outstanding warrants?" "I'm a DEA agent returning home from a work dinner," Marcus replied evenly. "My credentials are in my jacket pocket." Mitchell found Marcus's wallet and flipped it open, immediately spotting the federal badge and identification card. For a moment, his confidence wavered as he examined the credentials under his flashlight. The badge appeared genuine. The ID card had all the proper security features, and the photo clearly matched the man standing in front of him. But Mitchell had seen fake badges before, and something about this situation still felt wrong to him. A young black man claiming to be a federal agent, carrying what appeared to be authentic credentials, but driving alone late at night in an expensive car. "These look fake to me," Mitchell announced, though his voice carried less certainty than before. "Real federal agents don't cruise around at midnight in BMWs." Marcus turned slowly to face the officer, his expression remaining calm despite the escalating situation. "Officer, those credentials are genuine. I'm asking you to verify my identity through proper channels before this situation goes any further." "I don't take orders from drug dealers with fake badges," Mitchell replied, though he was beginning to sense that he might have made an error in judgment. "You're under arrest for impersonating a federal officer." As Mitchell reached for his handcuffs, Marcus made a decision that would change everything. "Before you do that, I need to make a phone call." "You'll get your phone call at the station," Mitchell said, though something in Marcus's tone made him hesitate. "This call is to my supervisor at the DEA," Marcus said calmly. "Special Agent in Charge Catherine Reynolds. I suggest you allow me to make it now, before this situation becomes a federal incident." Mitchell paused, his handcuffs halfway out of their case. In his 8 years of police work, he'd never had a suspect make such a specific claim about federal supervision. Drug dealers and con artists usually made vague claims about knowing important people, but they rarely provided names, titles, and specific agencies. "Go ahead and make your call," Mitchell said, though his voice was losing some of its authority. "When it doesn't go through, we'll add lying to an officer to your charges." Marcus pulled out his phone and dialed a number from memory. The call connected on the second ring. "Reynolds. Catherine, it's Marcus. I'm being detained by a Richmond police officer who believes my credentials are fake. I need you to verify my identity." "What's the officer's name and badge number?" The voice on the phone was crisp, professional, and carried the unmistakable authority of someone accustomed to handling federal law enforcement matters. Marcus looked at Mitchell's badge. "Officer Daniel Mitchell, badge number 2847, Richmond Police Department." Put him on the phone. Marcus extended his phone toward Mitchell. "Special Agent in Charge Reynolds would like to speak with you." Mitchell took the phone reluctantly, his confidence beginning to erode as the reality of the situation started to sink in. "This is Officer Mitchell." "Officer Mitchell, you are currently detaining one of my agents. Agent Thompson is conducting authorized federal business, and I need him released immediately." Mitchell's face began to pale as he recognized the tone of voice that came from years of commanding federal law enforcement operations. This wasn't a drug dealer's girlfriend pretending to be important. This was someone with real authority, speaking with the kind of confidence that came from outranking local police officers. "Ma'am," his identification looked suspicious, and Officer Mitchell Reynolds interrupted, her voice carrying an edge that suggested she was not interested in explanations. "Agent Thompson has been working undercover narcotics operations in your jurisdiction for the past 6 months. He is a 12-year veteran of federal law enforcement with commendations from the DEA, FBI, and ATF. The words hit Mitchell like a physical blow. He was looking at Marcus with new eyes, beginning to see past his own assumptions and recognize what he'd actually done. He'd pulled over, searched, and attempted to arrest a federal agent based on nothing more than racial profiling. "I need you to return Agent Thompson's credentials immediately and release him from detention," Reynolds continued. "And Officer Mitchell, this conversation is being recorded, and a full report of this incident will be forwarded to your chief of police, the mayor's office, and the Federal Oversight Committee that monitors police federal cooperation." Mitchell handed the phone back to Marcus, his hands shaking slightly as the full implications of his mistake became clear. This wasn't just a wrongful arrest. This was a federal incident involving racial profiling, civil rights violations, and the detention of a federal agent. Marcus ended the call and looked at Mitchell with an expression that was no longer patient or accommodating. "Officer Mitchell, I'm going to give you one opportunity to explain why you pulled me over tonight." "I thought you were driving suspiciously," Mitchell stammered, though both men knew the explanation was inadequate. "Driving suspiciously how?" Marcus asked. "I was traveling at the speed limit, obeying all traffic laws, and had committed no violations. What specifically made you decide to stop me?" Mitchell couldn't answer because the truth was too ugly to admit. He'd pulled Marcus over because he was a young black man driving an expensive car late at night, and Mitchell's 8 years of racial profiling had taught him to see that combination as automatically suspicious. "Officer, I've been pulled over 17 times in the past 5 years, Marcus continued, his voice remaining calm but carrying an edge of steel. 15 of those stops resulted in no citations, no arrests, and no evidence of wrongdoing. What they did result in was humiliation, harassment, and the constant reminder that my badge and my service to this country don't protect me from being treated like a criminal." Mitchell stood in silence, beginning to understand that his career in law enforcement was likely over. Federal agents didn't forget incidents like this, and the recording of his conversation with Special Agent in Charge Reynolds would be reviewed by every level of police leadership. But tonight was different, Marcus said, pulling out his own phone. "Tonight, you didn't just profile a random citizen, you profiled, detained, and attempted to arrest a federal agent, and you did it while being recorded." Mitchell's eyes widened as he realized Marcus had been recording their entire encounter on his phone. Every command, every illegal search, every moment of the traffic stop had been captured on video. "This recording shows a clear pattern of racial profiling," Marcus continued. "You stopped me without probable cause, conducted an illegal search, ignored my credentials, and attempted to arrest me for a crime I didn't commit. It also shows you calling my federal identification fake and dismissing my position as a DEA agent." The sound of approaching sirens filled the night air as additional police units responded to Mitchell's backup call. But instead of reinforcements, they would become witnesses to the destruction of a police officer's career. 3 patrol cars arrived at the scene, their officers stepping out to find what appeared to be a routine traffic stop. But the expressions on both Marcus's and Mitchell's faces suggested that something far more serious was unfolding. Sergeant James Rodriguez, Mitchell's supervisor, approached the scene with the confidence of someone accustomed to backing up his officers. But as he got closer, he could see that Mitchell looked shaken, almost terrified. "What's the situation?" Rodriguez asked, though something in the atmosphere suggested this wasn't a normal arrest. "Sergeant, I need to speak with you privately," Marcus said, displaying his federal credentials. "I'm DEA agent Marcus Thompson, and we have a significant problem." Rodriguez examined Marcus's badge and identification, his expression changing as he realized he was looking at genuine federal credentials. "Agent Thompson, what happened here? Your officer pulled me over without probable cause, conducted an illegal search, ignored my federal identification, and attempted to arrest me for impersonating a federal officer," Marcus explained. "The entire incident was recorded, and my supervisor has already been notified." Rodriguez looked at Mitchell, who was standing several feet away looking like he wanted to disappear. "Mitchell, get over here, now." As Mitchell approached, Rodriguez could see the fear in his eyes. "Sir, I thought his credentials were fake. Young guy, expensive car, late at night. It seemed suspicious." "You thought a federal agent's credentials were fake because he was young and driving a nice car?" Rodriguez asked, his voice carrying a dangerous edge. "Or was there some other reason?" Mitchell couldn't answer, because they all knew what the real reason was. In 8 years of police work, he'd developed a pattern of stopping young black men in expensive cars, and tonight that pattern had led him to make the most expensive mistake of his career. Rodriguez turned back to Marcus. "Agent Thompson, on behalf of the Richmond Police Department, I want to apologize for this incident. Officer Mitchell will face immediate disciplinary action and will cooperate fully with any federal investigation." "Sergeant, this isn't just about one traffic stop," Marcus replied. "This is about a pattern of behavior that suggests systematic problems with how your department approaches community policing." He pulled out his phone and showed Rodriguez the recording of the entire encounter. "This video shows clear evidence of racial profiling, illegal search and seizure, and deliberate disregard for federal authority. It's going to be reviewed by the DEA, the FBI, the Justice Department, and likely the media." Rodriguez watched the video with growing horror, seeing his department's reputation being destroyed in real time. Every moment of Mitchell's aggressive behavior, every illegal command, every assumption based on race rather than evidence was captured in high definition. "Agent Thompson, what can we do to address this situation?" Rodriguez asked, though he already knew the answer. "Nothing," Marcus replied. "This incident will be investigated by federal authorities, and Officer Mitchell will likely face criminal charges for civil rights violation. The video will be used as evidence in that prosecution." As if summoned by Marcus's words, unmarked federal vehicles began arriving at the scene. Special Agent in Charge Catherine Reynolds stepped out of the lead car, followed by 3 other DEA agents and 2 FBI investigators. Reynolds approached Marcus first. "Agent Thompson, are you injured?" "No, ma'am." But the entire incident was recorded, and Officer Mitchell made several statements that indicate this was racially motivated. Reynolds turned to Rodriguez with the cold expression of someone who dealt with police misconduct cases before. "Sergeant, your officer just committed federal crimes against one of my agents. This scene is now under federal jurisdiction." The arrival of federal agents transformed the atmosphere completely. Mitchell, who had started the evening as the authority figure, was now standing on the sidelines watching federal investigators document his career-ending mistakes. Rodriguez attempted to maintain some semblance of control. "Special Agent Reynolds, we're prepared to handle this matter internally and ensure appropriate disciplinary action." "This matter is beyond internal discipline," Reynolds replied. "Your officer violated federal law when he detained Agent Thompson without cause. This is now a criminal investigation." One of the FBI agents approached Mitchell with handcuffs. "Officer Daniel Mitchell, you're under arrest for deprivation of rights under color of law, a federal felony. You have the right to remain silent." As Mitchell was read his rights and led away in handcuffs, the other officers at the scene watched in stunned silence. In 8 years of police work, Mitchell had made hundreds of arrests. Tonight, he'd become the arrest. Marcus stood beside his BMW, watching as his colleague processed the scene and documented evidence. The intersection that had been Mitchell's hunting ground was now a federal crime scene, and his pattern of racial profiling had finally caught up with him. Rodriguez approached Marcus one final time. "Agent Thompson, I want you to know that Officer Mitchell's actions don't represent the values of our department." Marcus looked at the sergeant with an expression that was both tired and knowing. "Sergeant, this was my 17th traffic stop in 5 years. 16 of them were conducted by different officers from different departments. This isn't about one bad cop. This is about a system that teaches officers to see young black men as automatically suspicious. The words hung in the night air as federal agents continued their investigation. Radio chatter filled the silence as news of Mitchell's arrest spread throughout the police department. By morning, every officer in Richmond would know that racial profiling had finally resulted in federal charges. Reynolds approached Marcus as the scene began to wind down. "Agent Thompson, how do you want to handle this with the media?" "I want the full story told," Marcus replied, "including the fact that this was the 17th time I've been profiled while serving as a federal agent. If we don't address this publicly, it will keep happening to other people who don't have badges to protect them." The story broke on the morning news, accompanied by the full video of Marcus's traffic stop and arrest. Within hours, it had gone viral on social media, with millions of viewers watching a police officer attempt to arrest a federal agent based purely on racial assumptions. Mitchell's arrest became a symbol of the consequences of racial profiling, and his case was prosecuted with the full weight of federal law. He was convicted of civil rights violations and sentenced to 2 years in federal prison, becoming one of the first police officers in Virginia to face serious criminal consequences for racial profiling. For Marcus, the incident represented both a personal victory and a sobering reminder of the challenges faced by black professionals in America. Even with a federal badge, even with 12 years of law enforcement experience, even with the full authority of the U.S. government behind him, he was still seen as suspicious by officers who let their racial biases override their professional judgment. But the incident also led to significant changes in police training and accountability. The Richmond Police Department implemented new policies on traffic stops, bias training, and community relations. Mitchell's body camera footage became part of police training programs across the country, showing officers the real consequences of racial profiling. 6 months later, Marcus was promoted to senior special agent and assigned to lead a new task force on police-federal cooperation. His first initiative was a program designed to improve relationships between federal agents and local law enforcement, with special emphasis on recognizing and addressing racial bias in police. As he told reporters during a press conference announcing the new program, "This isn't about punishing police officers. This is about ensuring that every citizen, regardless of race, is treated with the dignity and respect that law enforcement is sworn to protect." The intersection of Maple Street and Fifth Avenue became a different kind of symbol. Where Officer Mitchell had once hunted for suspects based on racial assumptions, a small memorial plaque was placed recognizing the importance of equal justice under law. And every night, as Marcus drove home from work, he passed that intersection knowing that sometimes justice comes not from the badge you wear, but from the courage to stand up and demand the respect that every citizen deserves. Because in the end, the most powerful response to prejudice isn't anger or violence. It's simply refusing to accept that your dignity is negotiable, no matter who's holding the handcuffs.